Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Project Stargate Fringe Research. I'm your host, Mark Brenner,
I'm co-host Greg Ship.
and we are so glad to have you with us today. We're going to have a very, very awesome and exciting episode today. First hour, Greg and I are going to hang out for a while, and we have various subjects to talk about within the realm of the spooky woo and other things, including Civil War ghosts. I'm really excited about that. That's all going to be in the first hour. But in our second hour, we're going to have a special guest named Micheal Thompson. And he lives in North Georgia, and he is involved with study 5 research. And I don't know a whole lot about that other than Dr. Stephen Greer initially started all that stuff. But we're going to get to the bottom of what that is, and we're going to learn. He's going to tell us about his experiments he's done with it. So we're real excited about that. Greg, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm just waiting for autumn to come. It's been a very hot season up here in New Hampshire, and looking forward to swear weather. Of course, Halloween.
Oh man,
my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, man, I second that, man. Fall is just the most beautiful part of the year, man. I mean, you've lived down here in North Georgia, and you lived up in New Hampshire. I know it gets a lot colder up there. The deficit's quite pretty amazing, but as far as when fall comes, do you guys get it earlier than we get it in North Georgia? Do the colors start changing? The temperature drop faster?
It starts to drop a little bit faster, yeah, and leaves start to come out in full bloom. They start to change, and it's really beautiful. But I've been up to North Georgia, to like the Dahlonega area, and you go up to the mountains. And when all the leaves change color, it's like a valley of red and brown. It's very, very nice.
Beautiful, man. This is a good part. This is the time of the year I like to try to go do a little hiking here and there. Especially at Sawney Mountain, and even sometimes on the AT. It's been a while since I've been on the mighty Appalachian Trail. But at any rate, I have to confess something to you, Greg. I was pretty mean to you earlier. You were running behind a little, just a few minutes. You were running behind schedule. And what did I say? What did I say? What did I text you?
I'm just gonna pull up my phone right now. Hold on one moment.
Yeah, I'm holding.
If you don't hurry up, I will make you sing like a virgin, totally sober on tonight's podcast.
Yeah. Watch out.
Yeah, that would sound horrible. Yeah. That would sound horrible. Even sober, it's horrible.
I have something else to confess. I kind of did that once, but I was drunk. Karaoke.
Everyone does.
Yeah, I was pretty wasted. I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank in years, but I was like celebrating I think it was my 24th or 25th birthday with my ex-wife and my brother, and they tried to coax me in to do it, and they finally succeeded after another pitcher of beer. Yeah. Yeah, I sang like a virgin in a karaoke bar.
That's hilarious.
It's a true story, man. It's a true story.
Yeah.
By the way, man, I'll make another. I feel like I'm in. I feel like I'm in church, man. I have another confession, sir, Father. Forgive me for I have sinned, for I have been playing Halo a lot. I have been playing Halo. I've been playing MCC, Master Chief Collection. I'm trying to finish Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition on the Heroic, and simultaneously, I'm playing through Halo Infinite again on Heroic, and man, it is awesome on Heroic. What a great campaign, man. I love all the games in the MCC, especially Reach, especially Halo. Halo 2 Anniversary. I still haven't actually played Halo 2 Anniversary yet. I haven't. That's next. I've already played Reach. And now I'm gonna play. I played I'm playing through Halo Anniversary Edition, and then I'm going to play Halo 2 now. I'm going in order of the games. Which ones have you played, and which ones are your favorite?
Oof.
We played Halo. I think
the
the only Halo we played together was Halo 5.
We did, yeah. Halo 1, of course, is always my favorite. I remember being the one getting the game when on the release. It was a great atmosphere, and playing the game that night was amazing. I loved it, and I still do.
It's hard to beat, man. Did you play it on the original Xbox or on PC?
The original Xbox.
I played it on both, man. And the PC version was actually co-developed by Gearbox Software, and they added online multiplayer to it and 4 new maps, as well as the ability to fly Banshees in certain maps. They added a couple new weapons. I think one of them's a fuel rod cannon. I think that was one of them, and 4 new maps just for the PC version. But they implemented those, and then the MCC, which I love playing it on MCC because when you're playing Halo, it doesn't matter if you're playing on a PC or Xbox. It's all cross-platform. It really is. It's all cross-platform now. I can play against cats on the Xbox, PC, whatever, man. What have you been playing lately? Just curious.
Well, I've been playing a lot more of Holdfast Nations at War. It's Napoleonic War multiplayer game. I've been really excited for Sanzo, which just came out yesterday. It's a World War I tactical game. It's first-person shooter, and it takes place in Italy between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Italian Kingdom. It looks like a lot of fun. And I was actually watching a few people play online. I gotta save my money, unfortunately, until we get like a good discount on it. But yeah, I really want to play right now.
Yeah, I can't wait for Avowed. I can't wait to play Avowed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
Is it you that told me that you were playing Hell Let Loose, the World War One?
World War II.
Is it?
That's World War II. That's a good game, and what I like about it is that you take sectors one at a time. You have to conquer each sector at a time. That's a good game to play. It's on PC and it's also on Xbox, I believe, and I think PS4, but don't quote me on that one.
I'm going to quote you. If you're wrong, I'm going to come up there and waterboard you. And
Greg Ship said it's PS4.
And then I'm going to send this quote to the game developer so they can sue you.
Yeah. A game that needs a lot of love. A game that needs a lot of love right now is Beyond the Wire, and it's like Hell Let Loose, but it's during World War I. And it looks really good, but right now the player count is very low.
We need to fix that, Greg. When you fix that,
I know. That's the thing about multiplayer games is you don't know if it's gonna live up to it or if it's gonna die out quickly. That's my problem with multiplayer games.
Just like that was supposed to be a big multiplayer first-person shooter that we're not going to mention the name of. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. That failed miserably. I hated that, man. I hated that. Battlefield 4 remastered, Battlefield 3 remastered. Give me those, please.
Yeah.
They should remaster them and put them in one app. That would bring me back, get me back to Battlefield so fast your head would spin.
Oh yeah.
But enough about garbage. Listen, we have a really exciting show tonight. Let's get into our first topic of research. Greg, you've been researching the Civil War ghosts. I can think of very few people more qualified to talk about anything related to the Civil War and or the ghostly phenomenon that seems to be attracted to these battlefields. Tell us what you know.
Well, there is one battlefield that I've always wanted to go to, but I never had the time to ever go, and that's Gettysburg.
Me too.
I know Gettysburg. I've watched the movie years ago. I believe you saw it in the theaters.
Man, what a great movie! I saw it in the theater. It had an intermission right in the middle of it. You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see Gods and Generals, but I saw Gettysburg. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
But the reputation it has as a very haunted town precedes it, and it's kind of part of the whole attraction as well, apart from the history and the battlefields. That is the ghost tours, of course, and everyone's got a story to tell. Reenactors, tourists, they all have something to say. I am one of my
They
late
all got
coworkers.
something to say. Sorry. Go ahead.
You want to do karaoke now?
No. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, you're too sober for that.
No, just my medical cannabis here.
There we
I'm
go.
good. I'm good. Sorry.
You're good? All right. So as I was saying, a late coworker of mine, she went to the battlefield. This was like late at night, and they were kind of like lost. And they were in their car, and she said, I had this feeling of just pure dread. I don't know. It just came out of nowhere. Like I'm anticipating something really, really bad. And not knowing that she actually made it to, I think, like the Cemetery Hill part of that battlefield. There is so much going on with that site that it's incredibly active. There are people who like do reenactments all the time. There are even people that do those historical tours all the time. They wear historical period dress. We talked about what we call it. I forgot what it was called. Like an activation item or something like that.
Provoking.
Yeah, an object that would provoking to something that a spirit would be familiar with. And you got people dressing up from the 1860s. They play and sing period music. They'll probably talk like people used to back in those days. They're familiar with it, so that's why they would probably show themselves. And with a place like Gettysburg,
I can only imagine.
I wouldn't be. You can only imagine.
Would you stay out in the woods out there in Gettysburg by yourself, like wearing like a Confederate or a Union uniform, being like "Singing hell, Johnny Reb," you know what I mean, and acting like that.
Yeah.
Acting like that and like trying to get your ghost on with them.
I can't imagine who I would piss off. Ghost-wise, there.
Knowing on some past experiences me and you have had, that could be a hell of a long list. Like that guy up in the mountains one time that when we were going to see one of your friends, and he decided to block us in. Some hillbilly wannabe dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, some hoochie mama wannabe. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, like dressing up like Confederate and hanging out on Little Round Top, where the 20th Maine were. No,
I would do it if I would get. What if it was me and you, bro? What if we were armed to the teeth with ghost hunting equipment? If I brought all my gear with me, would you go up there with me, or would you be? Would you get scared? Would you be like, I'm right behind you, Mark, shaking?
You know what? I wouldn't mind that at all. I mean, you put on a Confederate uniform, do a rebel yell, see what happens.
I wouldn't wear a Confederate uniform. I'd be like, hey, y'all. Hey, he's right over here. I would seriously, BS aside, I would totally, I would go for that, man. Like, my mom and dad, they live down in South Mississippi, and they're not horribly far from Vicksburg. That is on my radar. Vicksburg, Mississippi. I've heard. Do you know anything about Vicksburg? Have you heard anything about Vicksburg? Or what?
Very little, unfortunately. That's Western campaign, I believe. But I could be wrong.
So
Because I'm a little bit more. Yep, continue.
So, there's how do you define Eastern and Western campaign? Like, well, is there like where do they divide that at? I'm just curious.
Well, I think Eastern campaign, as I remember, would be sort of like the Peninsula campaign where Maryland is, or Gettysburg, whereas like Western campaign would be more like Atlanta, or like further out to like Alabama, Mississippi. That's just how I usually see it.
Wow, that's cool, man. I think we ought to find some expert on this situation. I ought to reach out to Mr. Stan Gordon. He's up there in Pennsylvania. Maybe he might know somebody who would be an expert that maybe we get somebody on the program and talk all about it. Because you may remember Unsolved Mysteries had a segment about it, and it was creepy, man. I'll never forget those two ladies who said they got in an elevator and it didn't stop at their floor. It just kept on going and going and going. And then the door opened up and they saw like a whole room full of apparitions. And she said that like people's legs were getting sawed off and everything. Like she was watching this unfold before her eyes. And she said that one of those spirits looked at her. That dude was like, I see you. You know what I mean?
What's up? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I would have shit my. There I go. I said a bad word. I would have shit my pants.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a bad word. I think I'm entitled to one.
Sure.
Oh.
I just used my old friend Google. Vicksburg is Western Theater. Does
it have a map or something you could pull up for us for our viewers on YouTube? Is that anything like that worthy of that?
Let me just do I go to more? Do I go to?
And for you listeners on Spotify and other audio only formats, Greg will be descriptive of what we're looking at on this map.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out.
If not, he's
where
fired.
I need to go.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah, how do I show what I'm looking at here? That we did before, I just totally forgot.
It's called, Greg, share screen.
I know, share screen. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I'm a boob. All right, so let's see here.
Hey, I am too.
I'm
probably the bigger boob
friend
between the two of us.
Eh.
All right, so what he's pulling up here is a map of Vicksburg, Mississippi.
This is going to be on the American Battlefield Trust. Let's see here. Before the battle, during the battle, forces engaged 100. I'm sorry, I can't read. 110,000. Yeah, I can't read it all today.
I flunked kindergarten. I can read. I'm just kidding.
77,000 Union, 33,000 Confederate. Generals in this battle were Ulysses S. Grant. Confederate was John C. Pemberton. I believe John Pemberton was the man who helped create Coca-Cola.
Wow, it was over by that point. The war was pretty much over, anyways, wasn't it? For the most part.
Yeah, this is kind of what split the South in two.
Where's that? I want to see that map.
Yeah,
I promised him a map. You better deliver.
Okay, so here we go. Dun, 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 dun.
There we go. Good old South Mississippi. I love Mississippi. There's something about being in Mississippi. It's like Disney World to me. I don't know. I was born in Mississippi. I want to die in Mississippi. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I saw.
Okay, here we go.
All right, what are we looking at?
So this is on battlefields.org. It's the Vicksburg campaign of 1863. And we're looking right here is map between Mississippi and Louisiana. We got Grant over on the Louisiana side. See fighting at Port Gibson. See the siege of Vicksburg was between March. I'm sorry, May 18th to July 4th, 1863.
So this
And
was
also,
how long did were they in South Mississippi for? How long was
let's
that
see here.
campaign? I'm just curious. If you don't know, that's okay. I was just curious to know how long that campaign was.
No, it says here March 31st to July 4th, 1863. After crossing the Mississippi River at Bruinsburg on April 30th, Major General Ulysses S. Grant moved to cut the Southern Railroad supplying Vicksburg from the east and destroy the logistic and manufacturing center at Jackson. Successful at those objectives, Grant turned his attention to Lieutenant General John C. Pemberton's defenses around Vicksburg. In 17 days, his Army of Tennessee fought and won 5 separate battles and marched over 200 miles to reach the strategic Confederate city. Grant surrounded Vicksburg by May 18th, and a week later had settled in for a siege. After holding out for 47 days, Pemberton surrendered on July 4th.
Wow. Looking at this battlefield map, I'm seeing where they're on the right side where they're breaking it down for where the engagements were. It looks like General Grant really not only did he outnumber, but he outflanked them at every angle just about.
Just about.
They didn't have a chance. The Confederates, they didn't have a chance in hell. There's no doubt about that. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's really cool. We need to do some more research and see if maybe we can talk about this again at length in the future. And maybe even we can find a special guest that knows more about this than we do to talk about. So that'd be kind of cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, moving on, I've got being a member of MUFON. MUFON Journal has some fairly interesting sightings that I'm going to share with you and our listeners and our viewers on YouTube. I'm going to share screen and I'm going to pull up something from the MUFON Journal. I'm just going to share this real quick for a minute. Can you see it?
Let me zoom in here. Yep.
There we go. So this is this case here is it says unknown object videoed flying below jet aircraft, and it goes as follows: a man in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, reported taking a video of a formation of jets flying overhead at an air show before later realizing he'd also captured a fast-moving object along with the aircraft, according to testimony case 123678. And an annotated video screenshot of the mysterious object and the aircraft appears above. So here's that video. There's a refueling craft right here, and there's a jet aircraft that is actually about to link up here, I guess, to refuel, I guess. At any rate, and then here's that unidentified flying object. What the heck is that, man? See if I can.
Right.
It's not going to be fair.
It's disc shaped.
Yeah, it looks disc shaped. There's a dome right there. Yeah, it does look. You're right. It is disc shaped. Disc shaped. Disc shaped.
Disc shaped.
I almost said another word that starts with a D.
The other D word, yeah.
Yeah, that totally did not mean to happen. It's disc shaped. Look at it. I can definitely see what you're talking about. Right. There's a dome, and here's the shape right here. Yep. Wow, that's balling, man, as they say. Did I say that right? That's the new
Sounds right.
thing to say, ballin', or that's dope. Yeah, that's dope, man.
Dope.
That is a dope sighting, man. I'd be interested in finding out, see if what becomes of this case, and see what if they come up with any more information on that case. That's pretty interesting, man.
Definitely.
But, yeah, man. Coming up after our break here, we have Micheal, a SETI-5 researcher, is going to be with us, and we're going to learn all about the SETI-5 research and what it is, and we're going to hear all about his experience, his experiments, and maybe I can get him to talk about Elden Ring a little bit, because I think he plays Elden Ring.
Maybe.
We'll see what happens, okay? When we come back, Micheal Thompson will be joining us here on Project Stargate Friends Research. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to this second segment of Project Stargate Friends Research, and I'd like to welcome my buddy back, Greg. Today in this segment, we are introducing our special guest today. His name is Micheal, and he lives in the vicinity of North Georgia, and he is heavily involved in SETI-5 research. And what we want to do today, our objective with Micheal, is we want to learn what SETI-5 is, where its origins, the history of it, why he's interested in it, and I'd like to hear about some of his experiments. But without further ado, I want to welcome Micheal. I want to welcome you to Project Stargate. Thank you so much for being with us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Micheal, before we get into all this fascinating stuff, all right, we're gonna be off subject for a moment, okay? So just bear with me. My medical cannabis here is kicking in, and I'm ready to go into some fringe here, okay?
Okay.
Some deep fringe. Micheal, you play Elden Ring.
I do.
Tell us what you think about it. Tell us all about it.
Well, being a Souls veteran, I find that the game itself is a lot more accessible in terms of, there are more save points, easier ways so you can get your souls and stuff like that back. You don't lose any of your equipment or anything when you die, but even if you die, anything you've picked up, you keep. It stays in your inventory, good to go.
That's cool.
High fantasy, the initial learning curve, if you played Sekiro beforehand, like you can't play the game exactly like Dark Souls, because being able to jump opens a whole new shebang of experience for the game, because a lot of the times if you were trying to jump in any of the Dark Souls games, you're not going to get anywhere. So generally jumping just adds a whole lot of things, especially with the mounted combat. If you find that pole arms and javelins and things like that are your play style, then running around on your horse is pretty great doing that. And a lot of the weapons, it keeps the realism. Weapons will scrape the ground, and if they're stone, it'll spark off of that when you're doing heavy attacks or something.
If they're stoned?
If there are stone in the pathways.
Sorry.
If there's stone in the pathways, it'll spark off of it when you go to hit things. And
my hearing's going bad. Whoa. Sorry.
I think it's the magical cannabis. Satan cilantro.
Yeah, I love. It's made a big difference for me. I suffer from chronic back pain, and I just use it's legal Delta 8 or Delta 11. Also, it's legal and safe, and it's natural. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I started playing Elden Ring, and I'm not seriously playing the game yet. I'm experimenting with all the different classes.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'm experimenting as a samurai class.
Right.
Because I'm fascinated with ancient Japan. That's one of the things, like the samurai, the ninja, all that stuff.
Right. Or shinobi. So for the purists that hear you,
Greg is really into. Greg here, he's you've met Greg. He's really into. He's even more into history than I am, but he's got He collects swords and weapons and reenactment gear. He's the man when it comes to that stuff. We were just actually the break, we were actually talking about Civil War battlefields and the paranormal phenomenon that occurs in all of them, and that's something that actually we're going to be looking into maybe in a field project in the future.
But we have a lot of that here in where I live, because there's a lot of mustering grounds. There's a Confederate cemetery across the street here. There's a lot of really good spots in this area. So
maybe sometime we can talk more about that in detail.
Absolutely.
Sometime. So you're into the SETI-5 research. Tell me what is SETI-5 research, and and tell us about how it started.
All right. Well, CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's you know how generally you have the Close Encounters of the First Kind is where you see an object. Second, I think if I remember correctly, it's interaction with that object. Third,
or leaving trace evidence.
Trace evidence. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is entity enacted contact, right? And then fourth kind involves like abduction, human contact back and forth. And then the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or the CE5 protocols, started by Dr. Stephen Greer, is human enacted, consciousness driven contact and communication.
Now, as Dr. Greer left a medical profession, he was like the medical director of a hospital, of an emergency department over a hospital. I mean, this guy had a heck of a career. Yeah, and he left that he felt so passionate about this that he left that. And I believe it's partially because he's had experiences before throughout his life, like I have.
He mentioned something, and a lot of the things that I've read and seen involving him. He mentioned something that happened to him as a child, and then he had an extremely profound experience with actual entities at the age of 18 or 19. And that had driven him further to the point of, this is something that I want to do. Right. And he gave up he went through time building his resources and his research and everything like that. And eventually he created SETI, which is a search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the big satellites like Arecibo and stuff like that. And after a while, that kind of died down. And then he began the Serious Disclosure Project in 2001. And he's been, the spearhead for human created and inducted contact with extraterrestrial entities and beings. So he uses something that's called coherent thought sequencing, which involves meditation. You sit down, clear your mind. If you're heavily into meditation, it should come pretty easily. It wasn't really easy for me. It took me a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, to get my frequency and everything right to where I could actually project properly. But once I did, and then I actually went out and started trying to get video and things like that of experiences and reaction from things in the sky, I did have an experience with what appeared to be two orbs of light that were red with like a white or gray haze around them that slowly pulsed.
Wow.
And as one showed up by itself, and as it began to approach me, another in the clearing that I was in showed up and joined it, and they kind of pulsed back and forth at each other. Then the other that originally showed up started to approach. The other one began to move around to the outside and behind me, and immediately my fight or flight instinct went nuts.
Now, can we clarify? Let's clarify something. This is not something up in the sky.
No, this is on the ground.
This is on the ground, and you're having what may be an entity of some kind in transit interacting with you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. And as it began to approach me, like I said, my fight or flight instinct went nuts. Hair standing up for what lack I have.
I bet.
Standing up on the back of my neck, my nerves shaking and everything. And I screamed, "What the fuck are you? And it stopped. And is when I go to grab my camera and put my flashlight on it, it faded out and disappeared.
Wow.
And then after that, I have the video here on my computer. After that, I was doing some filming of the sky and things like that. And then I put my camera down toward the woods, and I find a huge mass of light in the infrared that's there in the infrared. But if I turn my infrared off, it's not there. That's off in the distance in the woods. And where I was filming at the time is close to the army base that's here in town.
Right. I can't. So, Frank D. Merrill.
Frank Merrill, yeah.
Did I've been there when I was in the military? We used to do our annual mountain warfare training up there. But before we get into further with your research, I wanted, there's something that's really pressing that I want to get off the table.
Okay.
Why did you get into this? Did you have prior experiences, any kind of paranormal phenomenon of any kind, from child? You're my age. You're about my age. Yeah. And I've had experiences my whole life, and that's why I started this research.
I was always one of those weird kids in the neighborhood, you know, always reading books about monsters and dinosaurs and Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music, you know, listening to Dio and Twisted Sister as a kid, you know.
Twisted Sister.
Yeah, you know, my first like initial rock album was the album Stay Hungry, which featured, you know, We're Not Gonna Take It and, you know, other songs. But when I was a child, I always saw things that everybody else didn't really pick up on. And I would point out, you know, what was that? Who was that? Who said that? Things like that. But when I was 9 years old, I awoke in the middle of the night and I couldn't move. And as I'm kind of, you know, trying to fight to get my eyes open, I wake up and I'm laying in this room, and everything in this room is just very bright. And standing over me are two very slender beings with kind of, they have like the typical gray eyes, but they weren't completely black. They were more like a bluish haze, like a star-filled look in them. Mm-hmm. And to the side of them were, the easiest way to say this is two freaking lizard people sitting there, and I'm starting to kind of freak out. And the entity standing closest to me while I'm on this table, it puts its hand on my chest, and I feel in my head, you know, just calm, you know. And I just get flashes of, you know, like flowers and warmth and things like that. And then I knew that I was going to be okay, you know. And it basically just said, close your eyes and breathe. And
how did it talk to you? Did you hear this verbally, or was this?
I heard it in my head, like you know, in the back of my head, just like, it wasn't really auditory, but I could feel what they were saying to do.
Right, an idea. It's like, because that was my experience too. One of my earliest experiences when I was about 3 or 4 that I ever recall, when the first time I recall seeing entities consciously. It was like an idea that just overwhelmed me. Like but they were really simple ideas. They weren't. I don't think that these little short guys are all that intelligent. I think that they're just like a biological android. I think that the intelligence is higher up in the food chain. But I just wanted to comment on what you said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it was basically the idea of just close your eyes and breathe. You'll be okay. And they put things on my wrist, on my chest, and kind of a thing over my eye that kept my eye open. And then I kind of went to sleep. I don't know if you can see it or not on this camera, but I still have the scars right here where there are indentations.
We don't have your camera feed.
Okay. But yeah, right here.
I can add it in. Hang on just a minute. Let me see if I can add it in. It should be automatic, but no, does it give me an option?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. But right here on my arm, I still have little indentations to where the needles from what they put on my wrist went in. And there's scars here on this side that are spread apart that are like two large dots. And then after that, I woke up, came up off my bed, like, what the hell? Thought it was a dream. But I look at my wrist and it hurt. And
It hurt.
there are two little marks, yeah. And then after that, I, still continued to see and hear things, like, phantasms, I guess you would call them, or, apparitions and things like that. I did spend about 3 years in a mental institution because of it, because I was diagnosed at the time. It was multiple identity disorders and stuff like that before it became dissociative identity disorder, what they upgraded it to, as well as, hyperactivity, some type of psychosis. I was diagnosed as schizoaffective. And because I was hearing voices and reacting to them, and my mother thought that I was mimicking something to talking back to myself when it wasn't me that I was having the conversation with. And since then, as I grew up, I've always had with me what I call a creepy crawly, is what I call her. She's tall, very slender, spindly arms and legs. Her face is very plain, but large eyes, no nose, no mouth. Long silver purplish hair. And her eyes look almost kind of, how an oil stain with water looks like it's mixing in with itself.
Yeah.
That's what her eyes look like. And as I was growing up, I started reading some things. I can't remember who wrote the book, but they were talking about Pleiadians and how their physical looks or whatever. And they had a picture of this Pleiadian. And it didn't really dawn on me because someone asked me to draw what my creepy crawly looked like, and I drew it. And then I saw in a documentary, this is what a Pleiadian looks like, and I was like, holy shit.
Were you shocked? Did you feel shocked? What were you?
I was kind of overwhelmed for a minute, and I had to take a step back and be like, okay, so all these people telling me I'm crazy. I know I'm not crazy, but trying to explain to people, and it comes across as, you're a nut job.
Well, we believe you. We believe you. I haven't known you that long, but you seem like a pretty. My intuition tells me that you're being honest, at least what you believe happened at minimum, and I do have a sense of credibility from you. I just wanted to point that out.
And I'll tell you this other one thing too. The two lizard guys that were in the room when I was a kid smelled to high heaven.
Oh, that's yeah.
I bet.
What would you? All right. What would you describe the odor? Would you tell me how it smelled to you?
If you were to take methane, rotten egg, and kind of a mustard smell.
Ugh. Must have reeked.
Yeah, because I come to understand later that according to, whistleblowers and informants, guys like Emery Smith or what's his name, Rick Doty, have talked about how they smell and things like that, and I'm like, well, that's really weird because I've smelled them before.
I wonder about Richard Doty, man. I worry about. I wonder about him. Is he still misinforming? I'm not trying to get off the beaten path here. But
no,
yeah, man. These things smell like the ones the only time I remember smelling an odor, it smelled like wet old cardboard and sulfur. That's what I smelled.
Yeah.
And I've also smelt that smell when I've had other types of paranormal experiences. But at any rate, I find that really interesting. Like me, you've had just a ton of incredible experiences throughout your life, and that's what's led you, partially at least, to.
And over the years, research. I've gotten further and further into reading, and like currently right now, I'm kind of obsessed with Dr. Micheal T. I think a lot of his books. I've been reading a lot.
I'm familiar with him. I am definitely familiar with Micheal T. I think I might be friends with him on Facebook. I might have to double check that.
Okay. But a lot of his books that I've been reading, and especially right now, I'm very, very, very keen on Antarctica right now too. But like you were saying about Rick Doty, you know, a lot of people, whether or not he's still doing the disinformation and things like that. But the same thing, a lot of people are now starting to have the same thing about Dr. Greer. Because people that were standing with him, oh, what you're doing is a great idea. The way you're implementing this is the right way to go. But other people, like I think it was Nick Pope and Linda Moulton Howe, have come out recently, and they're like, somebody was talking to them. They're like, "What do you think about what he's doing?" And Linda Howe was like, "Well, he's got connections with the Rothschilds. He's got a lot of access to things that a lot of us don't have." And with all this, you know, is he running some kind of psyop? Who's he working for? You know, because he's pushing the agenda, of course, that, you know, the extraterrestrials aren't a threat to us. But I'm not going to say that they're not all a threat, because there's people that have come out and said, too, that there are those that most definitely are.
Yeah.
But not 100%, you know.
When we're dealing with these entities, I have the following points I like to make. Number one, at the end of the day, we have no idea who or what these things are. We assume they're from another planet. We make a lot of assumptions, but at the end of the day, some of the evidence points towards something even bigger than that. I believe that we're definitely dealing with something that is both biological and extra dimensional in nature. To some degree, and one of the main reasons is there's so much paranormal phenomenon associated with them. It's just remarkable. I think we're dealing with something really, really big. You know, I'm open to a lot of different ideas, and ETs are definitely one of them in the traditional sense. But I think they might be ETs in a more of an extra dimensional sense. Yeah. Am I making sense?
Oh yeah, that's something similar to I don't know if you give any credence to the To the Stars Academy guys.
With, with the guy from
the guy from Blink 182.
Yeah. I know. I'm with you. Name escapes me.
Now I can't think of his name either.
I can't either. Brain fart.
Tom DeLonge.
Tom DeLonge. Thank you.
Yeah.
Aha.
Yeah, him. He's got, like, you know, Chris Mellon, a couple of other really big guys that are involved in, you know, secret or supposedly secret aerospace programs and things like that. And he's saying that everybody thinking that he was on like an interview with Steve-O on some interview thing that he does in a magic van or whatever, riding around Los Angeles. And he's like, people are saying that these things are, you know, from other planets and stuff like that, other galaxies. But the truth is, and this is totally the truth, that they're actually hyper and extra dimensional. And I'm like, well,
that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense. But at the same time, we, like you said too, we don't know. We 100% don't know. And if you want to look at, you know, clandestine organizations and things throughout history, they know to a degree what they are, but to completely have 100% of the scope of their agenda, I don't think so. You know?
I think that's a great point, and I think we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to continue this conversation. This is going in amazing territories, and I want to give Greg the floor here to get his thoughts in, and you're listening to Project Stargate Fringe Research with our special guest Micheal, and that does the SETI 5 research, and we will be right back. All right, we're back. Welcome back to Project Stargate Fringe Research, and me and Greg are here with our special guest Micheal Thompson. Micheal, thank you so much again for being with us, and welcome back.
Again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Greg, I'm going to give you the floor. I think you had some things you wanted to run by him. I'll give you the floor.
Well, I noticed that with a lot of UFO experiences, there have been some folks that say that they end up getting visited by the Men in Black. Did you ever have any experiences with the government folks
I've never had a
who claim to be?
I've never had a direct experience from any of the contact experiences and episodes that I've had, but I did in fact have a run for about a week or so involving some individuals that I would say are Men in Black.
Mm.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with the abandoned Lockheed base in Dawson Forest, Dawson, Georgia.
Yes, we've been talking about that a lot. We're actually planning an expedition out there.
Out there, I don't know if it's still there or not, because I haven't been out there in probably 20 years, so there's really no telling.
It
There
is.
used to be, well, I know the base is still there, but the spot that I was at,
Oh, my bad.
there used to be a path that went off, and it ended after about 1.5 miles into a clearing that's probably about 200 or 300 feet in circumference. And standing in the middle of that clearing is a large red door. There's no building, there's no foundation for anything, just a frame and a red door. It had a deadbolt on it where you had to have a key from both sides to unlock. And whenever we would get new cool kids in the neighborhood and stuff like that, we would go out there and drink, smoke, do whatever. And part of the initiation process was to, who's going to go knock on the door, man?
Right.
And one night, nobody was going to do it. So one of the girls with us was like, why don't we just go ahead and draw straws, man, and see who gets to be the lucky knocker, I, of course, drew the short straw.
Oh, man, of
So,
course.
I go to the door, and there's 9 of us out here, eight sitting around a little campfire, me at the door, and, on the door, and I'm like, all right, I knocked. And one of my friends is like, nah, man, nah, bang on it, dude. And I'm like, okay. So boom, 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 boom. And I go to turn around. I'm like, is that good enough? And then I hear behind me. And the door kind of cracks about maybe 2 to 3 inches.
Wow.
So I grab my cell phone, kick the flashlight on it, and I'm like, there's no fishing line or anything on this door. No wires or nothing. Let me check a head count. 8, 9. Okay. And I do that typical horror movie crap where you reach for the doorknob.
Yeah.
And when I go to reach for the doorknob, the door shuts and locked, and I'm like, fuck you, I'm out. So
Wow. Oh,
I just got
man.
everybody in the car. We start heading back up to the highway. And as we're getting up to the highway, 2 black SUVs turn in behind us. And a GSP gets in front of them and pulls us over. Right?
Yeah.
So the GSP, while this other one SUV sits behind him pulling us over, the other one pulls into where 53 passes over there in Dawsonville,
Yeah.
where that gas station is on the corner.
Yeah.
The second one pulls in there and sits. And
Thank you.
the officer is sitting here and he's like, so what are you guys out here doing? I smell marijuana, I smell alcohol. Were you guys out at the base? And we were like, no. And he's like, don't lie to me. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we were out there just, hanging out, doing things kids do. And he's like, let me get all your licenses and your IDs, yada, yada. And then he goes back to his car. But before he comes back to us, he steps back to the SUV and talks to them for a few minutes, brings us back our IDs and everything. And he's like, all right, you're going to go straight home. And I don't want to see you back out here. And we'll call it even, okay? Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good night. The GSP goes to pull off, and the SUV sitting behind him sat there. And as we went to leave, they kicked their lights on and followed me, driving everyone home. And then
Wow.
when I got home, they sat outside my house for about 2 hours and then left. And then for like a week and a half after that, I started getting random weird phone calls of like, don't think you know what you know. And then it would hang up. Or I'd get random beeping.
Whoa!
And
He said,
buzzes.
whoa!
Yeah.
Michael, what did he say?
It just said, don't think you know what you know.
Holy
And I'm
dookie!
like, well, what does that even mean? But yeah, like I said, I started getting buzzing and beeping, weird, just droning noise and things like that. And then the last phone call I got was at like 4:00 in the morning, and they're like, now you know we're watching. And then,
Well, I bet you do.
That's just full on harassment right there.
Yeah.
That's just for getting stoned and knocking on a door. It's ridiculous.
yeah,
Dude, that's unconstitutional, man.
Mhm.
If it's our government doing it, it is flat out, or anyone, it's unconstitutional as hell.
Yeah.
Sorry, having a libertarian moment there. At any rate, man, dang, man, that is nuts.
I always assumed that any kind of organization like that, like Men in Black, they're above all of that.
Mhm.
All of that. It's like the laws, Constitution apply to us. We do what we think will do to protect national security. That's just how they do it.
The only other time that I had anything like that was after a Bigfoot sighting that I had here.
Oh, really? Do tell.
I was coming down Highway 60. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the area that I live in, but there's a big golf course on one of the main highways coming into town. And it's probably 3:30 in the morning, really foggy, and there's something sitting in the middle of the road, and I'm coming pretty fast, and I swerved and turned around where there's a little tubing area where people go tubing and stuff like that. And I turn around and I put my headlights on it, and it stands up on its hind legs, and it starts walking toward me. And I'm assuming it was eating what it had in its hands, and it throws this possum at my windshield.
On your windshield?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And the only thing that I could see of it was like the reflection of its eyes in my emergency lights or my parking lights.
Okay.
And it walked off down the hill into the river.
I believe you, by the way. I'm just reacting to this. This is
and it smelled like wet dog and raw oxidized beef. If that's a scent you're familiar with. Yeah. Just that real sweet, dry meat smell. But mixed with a wet dog. That's what it smelled like. And as I'm sitting here, 2 police officers come up the highway, and they turn in to go into the golf course. One of the officers continued into the golf course. The other officer turned around and came back to me. And he's like, hey, what's going on, man? You doing all right? I'm like, well, I guess. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't think you'll believe me if I tell you. And he's like, well, why don't you step out of the car and, and we'll talk about it. I'm like, okay, fine. So I get out of the car. He's like, you been drinking tonight? You got anything on you? Any weapons in the vehicle? General crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I'm going to give you a couple of tests just so that for my betterment and everything, we're good to go. I did the roadside sobriety test, stand on one foot, touch your nose, say your alphabet backwards, crap like that, And he's like, so,
I couldn't do the last part. I could not do the last part.
I can do it all day. CYXWV.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
And he's like, well, it looks like you hit an animal. And I'm like, no, I didn't hit that. It was thrown at my car.
That's crazy.
He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. It's kind of hard to describe. It was really tall, covered in hair, smelled really bad. And immediately he kicks the flashlight on and he's like,
oh, Lord. I bet.
And I'm like, well, I have my sketch pad. I can sketch it out, let you see it. So I sketched it out and handed it to him. And he's,
Hey, Michael, you're cutting out, buddy, a little bit.
Sorry,
I'm sorry,
it's
you were
from.
cutting out.
Sorry,
Could you repeat that last part?
I sketch it out to him, and I give it
Right.
to him, and he looks at it with a flashlight, back in my eyes, paper, back in my eyes, gets really close. And he's like, "Well, would you like to make a report or anything?" And I'm like, "No, I just want to go home and go to bed, you know." And he's like, "Well, it's funny that you say you see this because we've been getting phone calls for like the last 3 hours tonight
Wow.
of residents
And this is in
golf
Lumpkin County?
residents that were in the golf course saying they're seeing something like this going through their trash."
Is this in Lumpkin County, Georgia?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to clarify
Yeah.
that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's in Lumpkin County. And he's like, "Well, if you want to make a report, I'll be at the station till 9 a.m. and we'll see you if you decide to come in." So I leave and I go home, and I get woke up at probably about 9:30 in the morning, and there's two guys in suits sitting outside going, "So we're with the wildlife management and all this other crap around here, and we understand that you almost hit a bear." And I'm like,
A bear.
"Bear? No, that wasn't a bear, dude."
Yeah,
And they're
you
like,
just
"Well,
ran smack over a bear and
Yeah.
drove away.
yeah, in my green Geo Metro."
Ooh,
You know.
the Metro.
And
I had
they
you pegged for a Chevette, dude. I had you pegged.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, or the remodel '72 Ford Pinto. You know,
Yeah.
and they just sat with me for like a good hour, hour and a half, and they're like, "Well, did you see anything else? Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?" Well, just for the sake of yourself and for any type of media or anything, it's probably best that you just don't say anything.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm probably only going to tell my friends over a few beers, but sure, whatever. Get off my property, you know.
Yeah.
And I never saw him again. That was it.
Thank God for that. Man, good questions, Greg. We're about halfway through our last segment, Michael, and I want to hear about some of your experiments and your successes and failures in those experiments. Could you kind of give us kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Generally, with what I have been using, there is an app that Dr. Greer made. It's available on iPhone. It's available on Android. Whatever you use. And it's a CE5 protocols application, and it comes with a how-to kind of primer that tells you what type of equipment you can use, laser pointers, cameras, things of that nature. And it has a step-by-step process of setting your location and how you can use coherent thought sequencing to zero in, project your thoughts to reach out so that you can kind of zero them in to where you are. And there are tones that you play before you begin your meditation. And apparently these tones were all recorded at crop circle encampments and things like that. People. And you play those, and if you're using any type of radio frequency, the better. Like you can play it through speakers or any type of like a Bluetooth or something like that. Anything that uses radio frequency is a lot better to project that sound. And it acts like a beacon for if anyone's listening, they can zero into where you're at. Then you begin your meditation process, you're clearing your mind, breathing, and then you kind of do reverse remote viewing. Where instead of looking into other places, you're kind of giving the idea of showing where you are so that something else can see you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had the episode with the two orbs that freaked me the heck out. And other than that, I've gotten various lights in the sky. The massive light that I mentioned earlier that was in the woods that I couldn't see unless it was under infrared light. And I've picked up, sounds of things in the distance, but nothing really nothing really to interact, because most of the time I'm out doing it by myself.
Have you ever
And,
set up did EVP sessions or anything like that when doing this? Have you ever thought about trying that?
I'm in the process of picking up a recorder for that.
Because a colleague of mine, her name is Pam Nance. She's got a master's degree in archaeology, anthropology, and she's a parapsychologist also.
Mm-hmm.
And she's part Native American, and she's a Native American shaman or medicine woman. But anyway, she very nice lady. She was telling me about how they did an experiment where they decided to go to Chris Bledsoe's place up there near Cape Fear, North Carolina. Right. And I don't know if you're familiar with his situation.
I've heard things. I've never really read anything yet.
Well, the bottom line, I'll bottom line for you, and after the show, I'll send you a link to her interview, or you can go to my channel. You can see there's a 3-part interview that I did with her. I think you might find it riveting.
And that'll give me some homework to do too. So
yeah, it's. I think you'll find it very interesting. Okay. There's several of them actually that has some to do with this matter. One was with Kathleen Martin. I'd also recommend her. I actually met Pam Nance through Kathleen Martin, actually. But at any rate, it sounds like you've had a lot of unique experiences and a wide gamut of under the paranormal umbrella. What do you think? Do you think all this stuff is connected? Do you think in some way? Do you think that the UFOs and the haunted houses and other situations that are within the paranormal umbrella, do you think that there's some crossover at times?
I think there is, because of the idea that a lot of people are beginning to center on right now is based on the dimensionality and density of consciousness and how consciousness applies to everything, because essentially consciousness is energy at its core, and energy, from what we can tell, cannot either be destroyed, created, just is. So being able to tap into those varying levels and energies that will allow you to experience and see things that are outside and in between what we conceive as being our reality.
I call it the plateau.
Okay. And since, plateaus, and that's similar to anybody who is a pharmacokinetic type of person that's into like DXM and things like that. For the dissociation, it's cough syrup that apparently gets you really high. But they call the levels of which that your trip is called plateaus. So it's fun. I was just using that as a
I didn't know that.
Between what you were saying, yeah. And but everything boils down to consciousness, and as long as you're able to tap into that consciousness and understand what you're seeing and interacting with, then I think you can embetter yourself through the use of it and accepting that it is there. Because denying what could be or what couldn't be, I mean, that's one of the greater mysteries of what is and what isn't. And as long as you figure out exactly what is and how that affects you and the people around you, then you're probably better for it.
How much do you know about parapsychology?
Not very much, other than, reading and watching random shows and things of that nature, but I've never really gone out and done it myself.
I think that it's right up your alley, if I may say so, Michael. I have a podcast that the last show we recorded. It's all about parapsychology, straight from the mouth of one of the world's leading parapsychologists, Dr. Barry Taff. Greg was with me on that interview. What did you think about it, Greg?
Very riveting, really good conversation. He's a great storyteller too.
Yeah, he goes into the science more. He goes into the science side of the paranormal. Now, my philosophy is I think there's a science side and I think there's a spiritual side, and I think they're connected for sure. I think that I have a theory of everything that I came up with several years ago, but this is part of that theory of everything. And you're right, consciousness I definitely believe in an afterlife. I've heard hundreds of accounts of near-death experiences. I've had a guy named Howard Storm on my program. He was one of the first interviews I did with a celebrity guest here on the program, and he was on a segment of Unsolved Mysteries, and he was telling me about how he didn't believe in an afterlife, and then he has this unbelievable experience, and it changed him, and it fundamentally changed him. But really enjoy talking to him. He's a great guy. But these near-death experiences, it seems like when I said the plateau earlier, Father Malachi Martin, are you familiar with him by chance?
Not at all.
He's an
The
exorcist.
name sounds familiar, but
Yes, sir. He's an exorcist. He was in the Jesuit order of Catholics, but he left, and he still performed mass, but he gave up his oath of poverty and some other oath. I can't remember, but he was able to perform mass, and he was a ordained exorcist, and he worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and he worked with a guy named Ralph Sarchi that I know.
that's where he sounds familiar from, is Ed and Lorraine Warren. Although
Yeah.
I'm very skeptical of old Ed and Lorraine. Mostly Lorraine, but Ed, on the other hand, seemed pretty legit when he was alive.
There's a lot of skepticism
Lorraine,
out there about it, for sure.
yeah, especially the whole Amityville thing. But
Right.
there are other stuff like with Annabelle and the Enfield incident and stuff like that. That stuff was, yeah. But
Yeah.
Lorraine just kind of, she tickles me in strange places, but not in a good way. If that makes sense. You know?
I hear you. I got you. I got you. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, the consciousness. I believe in a possibility of a remote consciousness. I'm open to that possibility, and I think that it's possible, if that's the case, that our consciousness may be, for example, part of the fourth dimension time. It could, because, and that would explain how clairvoyance works. You know, you're getting data or information from the past, present, or future. I think that's what clairvoyance is.
Or kind of basically what your mental connection is to what would be considered the source and how strong it is. If that
Possibly.
makes sense. Yeah.
And then there's that's just parapsychology stuff. That's deep parapsychology stuff right there. But at any rate, man, I really enjoyed talking to you, man. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And
Oh, no problem. Anytime.
do you have a YouTube channel or like?
I just have my Facebook. I haven't gotten into really setting any of that stuff up. I'm basically just kind of building my portfolio.
I got you.
Where I do that.
Well, we're glad that you were with us this evening. I appreciate your time, and thank you for being a guest tonight.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah,
and it was
absolutely.
great talking to you guys too.
This is Mark Brenner with Project Stargate Fringe Research, and we're signing off for the night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.